I just want to give a heartfelt welcome to everyone. I am Dr. Kathy Bishop. I'm the program head of our MA in Leadership with an Executive Leadership Specialization, known as our Xl, or as well as our Graduate Certificate in Values-Based Leadership. I'm delighted to be here with you all and to be presenting with my amazing colleague and Xl alum, Diane Drouin, on creating thriving organizational cultures with different generations. And we also have our wonderful educational specialist, Ariana Kingerson Ski. So with that, I think we're all going to begin. So I'm going to just see if I can shift this slide. I can. And I just want to start out with to let you know that we hope for this session to offer some insights and it also to be a lively dialogue. So please feel free to use the chat and reactions function within your Zoom tab bar, as well as when we get to the dialogue part, you'll also have an opportunity to raise your hand and speak directly. So at that point, I'm just going to move into our land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the campus is located on the traditional lands of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees, and the Esquimalt nations. And I had the privilege of walking the lands this morning, and I'm reminded daily how lucky we are to be able to take in the aliveness, the wisdom, and beauty of the woods and nature. In fact, my screensaver shows one of the trails on campus, Charlie's Trail. And at Royal Roads, we begin our meetings, presentations, and events with the sign of respect to acknowledge the rich history of these lands as an act of reconciliation. And that involves making a statement recognizing the traditional lands of the Indigenous people, and honoring this history is essential for building respectful relationships and understanding between people. So also recognizing our virtual reality, I want to acknowledge the lands and peoples wherever you may be. So feel free to put an acknowledgement in the chat box if you like. And as you're doing that, Diane, my co-presenter in Ottawa, would also like to acknowledge the land she's coming from. Over to you, Diane.
Thanks, Kathy. Hi, everyone. I'm so pleased to be connected on Leap Day with you. I acknowledge that I am located on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory.
Wonderful. So thank you. So today we have just under an hour together in which we'll be sharing some insights around creating thriving organizational cultures with different generations. And as I said, hope to engage you in some lively dialogue. And we'll also take the last few minutes to give some information around our MAL-XL and Graduate Certificate in Values-Based Leadership and answer any questions you may have on that. But without further ado, let's start talking different generations. Diane, over to you to get us going.
Thanks, Kathy. So looking at general characteristics, and I underline general here, to describe traits between generations, sources and opinions talk to generational differences, different values, different working styles, different expectations, different attitudes, and different authenticity. So first, let's talk about traditionalists or the silent generation, and born 1922 to approximately 1945. We say these folks are loyal, they're dedicated, they're risk adverse, they're to teamwork, and can possess sort of a heightened interpersonal skills. They love chat and they love communication. Generally speaking, baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964, they're work-centric. They set goals to achieve a certain lifestyle, pursuit of personal gratification. Some would argue they possess a sense of entitlement. More to come. And Generation X, born between 1965 to 1980, they're hard workers. They like to play hard. They also seek that elusive work-life balance and can sometimes question authority. And then we have Generation Y, or the Millennials. They were born between 1981 to 1996. And they're global centric. They're brought up with the internet. They were also have an upbringing that was quite programmed so that their baby boomer parents could keep them occupied while they work. And they also have an interest of importance to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then there's our Generation Z, or our Zoomers, born in 1997 to about 2015. They're the first generation born to this century. They're lifelong learners. Their values are important to them. They want to create change. They're technically very savvy, grew up with smartphones and screen time, and they thrive on immediate access to information and social media. So you may have other qualities you wish to add to this basic list from your observations and your experience, and we look forward to hearing what those might be that you'd like to add to this when we get into our dialogue session a few slides from now.
Beautiful. So thanks, Diane, because, you know, for highlighting those generational difference, because as you said, you know, we know different generations have different values, different working styles, different expectations, attitudes, ways of showing up authentically in the workplace. And so this, of course, then impacts organizational culture and how it may experience, like how the culture and people within it might experience tensions or toxicity. I just want to take a few more moments then to touch on the questions. Then what is intergenerational organizational culture? When does organizational culture become toxic, or at the very least start to break down due to stereotypes based on ageism? And also, why is intergenerational culture crucial in strategy implementation? So first, what is intergenerational organizational culture? In any organization, culture is the way we do things around here. Our way, our unique way. So Edgar Schein, who is was a cultural guru, kind of the founding father of talking about culture, said that culture is to a group what personality or character is to an individual. But he cautioned not to oversimplify it to understand it, because there are a series of interacting elements to take into account, things like customs, traditions, group norms, language, rituals, symbols, organizational structures, systems, procedures, and of course, beliefs and values. So culture really consists of the spoken and unspoken rules of how to operate or what to do in the workplace. So intergenerational culture is recognizing that all generations contribute to creating the workplace culture. And so we can't just figure it's sort of a one size fits all. It's how do we all work together? So second, when does organizational culture become toxic? Or at the very least break down due to stereotypes based on ageism. And ageism is that prejudice or discrimination based on a person's age. So that can be experienced both by older and younger workers. And as a result, different silos can start to form around the judgments like, oh, they're too old to get it, or they're too young to understand. So Richard Barrett wrote a book called The Values-Driven Organization, and he highlighted a workplace issue called entropy. And entropy is the amount of energy in a group that is consumed, in unproductive work. And as a result, it affects the organizational performance. So think about a time like when you've gone to work and you've spent like an hour venting or being ranted at. We know it feels lousy and you really don't get anything done. That's entropy. So entropy is a measure of the conflict, the friction, and the frustration that exists within a group. So unhealthy values that lead to entropy are competition, blame, conflict avoidance, bureaucracy, silos mentality, confusion. So you can start to see if there's silos, or say in a culture of blame where maybe boomers are blaming millennials and millennials are blaming boomers, nothing gets done. And so things halt. And then the solution really rests in understanding what might be different, the differing values or the underlying fears that people are experiencing, whether that could be maybe around their survival at work or their safety or the security, or just, again, different understandings. And really looking at, okay, how does that block the healthy expression of what's important to people? So at the heart of intergenerational organization culture, we know can be stereotyping. And without having solid communication practices in place, there can be really breakdowns within communication due to ageism. So the lower your cultural entropy in your organization, the higher your organizational performance and culture well-being are going to be. So that brings us to the third point, which is, why is intergenerational culture crucial in strategy implementation? Because we know that intergenerational culture is here to stay, and organizational culture affects employee performance and happiness. So it makes sense to be focusing on enhancing intergenerational relationships and creating a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And leaders are powerful influencers in shaping the culture of an organization and the employee experience. So becoming aware of intergenerational values, and again, the working styles, expectations, attitudes, can go a long way for improving workplace culture, which then improves performance and happiness, and it then gives a stronger bottom line and creates more meaningful impact in the world. So I do just want to offer a word of caution. While the concepts of generations can be helpful, it is also important to remember we're painting people with broad strokes, which then, again, can lead to that prejudice and bias and stereotyping, and can be misleading about what specific employees actually need. So really, truly, the best way forward is to talk with and listen to your people, to hear what their people needs and wants are, and to create a shared collective values and ways forward, and that kind of understanding. So I think I'm going to stop there and turn it back to you, Diane.
Thanks, Kathy. So I have an interest in this topic. My background is in community engagement, and in the projects that I contributed to, I had a natural interest and affiliation with bringing people together of different generations. And we all experienced during the pandemic what isolation and loneliness that transpired during those difficult 2.5 to 3 years actually resonated across generations. And so I applied to go back to university in 2020 and was accepted to start in 2021. And I graduated in 2023 with a capstone as my last sort of credit to be able to earn this master's degree. And so I decided, because of my interest, because of personal circumstances, but also on the back of what we all experienced during the pandemic, was to look further into what if we came together to intentionally co-create intergenerational shared spaces. And so that was the focus of my Engaged Leadership project. And its purpose was to assemble a group of intergenerational practitioners to look at collaboration for positive change in our community, but also the ripple effect that this might have. So I proposed, how might we co-create intergenerational shared spaces to facilitate and promote more human connections across generations. So my capstone projects reinforce that when people are given the opportunity to develop lasting, meaningful relationships with someone who has different knowledge, abilities, experience, the results are shared learning, enhanced life skills, improved health. There's a decrease in the feelings of loneliness and isolation, and there's an overall greater sense of purpose for everyone. And the key findings came from discussions about existing intergenerational sites, what was in place in terms of programs and services, and the potential for more if there was better collaboration between us and communication between intergenerational practitioners. And the outcome, we all agreed that if we actually contributed or collaborated, our contributions would be greater to the general population, and then maybe there'd be a ripple effect that what we were trying to instigate would be modeled elsewhere. So outcomes from this project created two major things. In Ottawa, we created the Ottawa Intergenerational Network, which is an organized community of intergenerational practitioners. And together we share our practices. We share wanting to coordinate new innovative intergenerational initiatives that could serve as these models for others across sectors and organizations, with the goal to bring more people of all ages together to form meaningful connections. The other was an intentional contribution to a national community of practitioners so that we could raise greater awareness and promote the benefits of intergenerational connections and programming across sectors and jurisdictions as a community social responsibility. So one of those actions is actually promoting the proclamation of June 1st as Intergenerational Day in Canada. It's not only recognized in my home city, but it is recognized in other cities across the country. It is recognized by provinces and the territory. And our efforts are actually being recognized. And for example, just this month, the founder of the National Intergenerational Day, Sharon McKenzie, presented in front of an all-federal party committee on Parliament Hill to share the importance of intergenerational practices and also to convey a call to action so that we could establish a national agency of intergenerational practices as a public health priority. And as Sharon would say, it's not about doing different things, it's actually about doing things differently. So a lens of intergenerational considerations, because it just benefits everybody. And for actually scaling this to a greater audience on April 24th to April 30th, Generations Working Together, which is an affiliate organization based out of Scotland, they will be the host of Global Intergenerational Week. And that will have many countries around the world participating, including Canada. And they'll be sharing their practices. They'll be sharing how their practices with intergenerational considerations are changing lives and actually making a difference. So here in Ottawa, we are a grassroots organization, and I like to think that there's ripple effect, and there are other great grassroots organizations like Generations. And together with my co-founder, Dr. Claudia Lavier, we are just getting going really on the back of this capstone project and the great relationships with the other organizations and other practitioners here in Ottawa and across the country, so that we can raise awareness of the importance of intergenerational relationships and promote the people, the programs, the initiatives, and organizations that believe in the mutual benefits of learning, engagement, and interactions between people of different ages. think over to you, Kathy.
Lovely, thank you. The next slide. Wonderful. Well, as we're part of the executive leadership program, and as Diane shared, her capstone project was through the work that she did with the MA in leadership with the executive leadership specialization, which is again also looking at real world work in an organization and back. We chatted a bit, and we just also wanted to sort of plant some ideas and seeds around some of the strategies for executive leaders to create thriving organizational cultures, looking at some of the opportunities, some of the challenges, as well as what might be a bridge to intergenerational gaps. And so we actually decided to keep some of the key points on this slide, just so that you could take them away if you want to screenshot. But basically looking at the opportunities, really, it is about, thinking about taking a strength-based approach. And the strength-based meaning recognizing that it's great to have the diversity in the room. And at times it may be challenging, but that's where, through developing shared values, through a collective wisdom and talents of people of all generations, that things can really pop. And so we see that as a real opportunity. And as leaders who set the direction and atmosphere within the organizations, you can intentionally set the tone and practice for professional growth through learning from one another, championing the power of collective wisdom. And again, we're focusing on executive leaders, but we know that within an organization, leaders and leadership happens at all different levels. So you can also see yourself, if you're a mid-level leader or a frontline leader or one of the informal leaders, that there's all different ways that you can be part of creating that culture. So it's really about being intentional about breaking down stereotypes and addressing ageism to support and trust building, as well as respect among people. So, we can't really deal with a challenge if we don't name it. So a lot of times people may say things off the cuff, but to really stop and say, okay, wait a minute, let's name this and bring it to our awareness. And then how can we all collectively work together to move forward in a way that we want to and that works. So of course, and then again, the other end of that spectrum can be challenges, which again, there can be that natural divide between generations. And as we've said, think work styles and approaches, but also values, expectations, ways of showing up in the workplace, that authenticity of how people are and who they are, and allowing for that. And then also another challenge can be around that generation gaps can affect efficiency and effectiveness. That's that entropy if it isn't addressed. So remember that cultural entropy is the amount of energy in a group that is consumed for unproductive work because people are struggling or have tensions within them. So it is about how do we enhance our organizational performance by connecting together. And so some of the ways to bridge intergenerational gaps is to, again, cultivate that collective and individual leadership skills. And part of you just being here today and learning more and saying, yes, how can we lead on is one of those ways. To really work from real life experiences around, what's going on for you, what's going on for people in the organization, and start there and have those real conversations, because it's only in real conversations can we find real solutions. Another opportunity would be to make mentoring something that's constant and reciprocal. Think about even omnidirectional mentoring, where, people can really, expand on the best of all worlds. You can also look at expanding communication strategies and address ageism, as well as encouraging intergenerational interaction and teamwork. And so these are just some of the opportunities around, looking at this, as well as thinking through how we might empathize across generations. And we also recognize that there's a lot of wisdom, passion, interest, and experience in our room right now. And so really, we're also interested in, what do you think might be some of the ways to bridge those intergenerational gaps? And would love to sort of have more conversation about that. But before we go to there, I just want to check to see if, Diane, you want to add anything more? And I also just want to say, Diane, we had this conversation where you planted the idea of the intern. I'm not sure if you want to share that, but it keeps bubbling up for me, and I just love that movie. And so I throw it to you for a moment, my friend.
Oh, that's so great. In sort of getting ready for today, I just planted a little seed with Kathy, and I said, have you ever seen the movie The Intern? And she paused on, not sure. And then I said, well, it'll maybe just help set the tone for today. So it stars Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway, and it is a wonderful, light movie, but about how an older gentleman decides to come back to work, give himself a sense of purpose, and how, very interestingly, he brings a lot to this office of millennials and generations younger than himself. And it actually is just a great reminder of how important relationships do break down these barriers, if they are there, if they're tangible barriers, but getting to know each other. And so much of what we do in leadership is relationship based. And so it was just a cute movie, and I recommend it to others here if you haven't seen it. So.
Lovely. Yes, I rewatched it, and it's really lovely and charming. So it just, I think, a way to root it down, which is excellent. Yeah. So at this point, I'm going to flip over into our next. Am I going to flip into our next section? It's not turning. There we go. Our next section, which is really about questions for dialogue. And I noticed that there's a few questions that have popped in already to the questions. So thank you. And to Tanya and Shell for those questions. We'll also speak those out, or you can speak them out too. And we also wanted to throw in a few other questions if that might generate dialogue too, which is, how has ageism touched you, your community, your workplace? Can you share your experience in working in an intergenerational environment? And if a strength-based approach was taken to enhance organizational culture, how could more intentional connections between generations benefit you? So, so feel free to jump in. And at this point, I think we'll just go to the chat and start there. And if there's any other questions that arose from anything that we've spoken to so far, or anything else that comes through. So at this point, I see that Tanya, you said, in some recent discussions, I've been hearing a lot about reverse mentorship. And I mean, I'll start with that, and then Diane, I'll turn it over to you. But absolutely. I mean, reverse mentorship is where, again, it's sort of there has been a mental model that people who are older have all the wisdom and people who are younger don't. And so reverse mentorship is that recognition, is that younger people can also teach older people. Especially, I know I learn a lot from my sons around technology. So that, again, it's different roles, it's different understandings. But again, even in this intern, the intern movie, I loved how you could see the informally mentoring in terms of how each person was showing up, and seeing the humor of people just kind of learning, oh, okay, actually I can, as somebody who was older, I can actually take some time off. Or with people who are younger, who were more concerned about how the older gentleman was feeling. He was just sort of like, I'm fine. I'm okay. I just want to get on to work. Let me just work. I just want to work. And so just starting to watch how mentorship can happen informally as well as more formally with an intentional, and I call it omnidirectional mentorship rather than reverse mentorship, because even with reverse mentorship, I think it's a term that kind of, again, privileges that mentorship should be one way, and omnidirectional for me is that mentorship can be all ways. Yeah, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, and I'll just add that in the intergenerational practitioner circles, we tend to talk about relationship between generations as intergenerational. It's more reciprocal. So mentorship to me often it seems to sound like what we think it is, an older person with more experience and more knowledge, some wisdom, telling a younger person how it is, how it was, how it should be. And then all of a sudden they've come up now with this reverse mentorship. And I was thinking about that wording. I was thinking it sounds like somebody's backing up a new kind of vehicle. Like it's not moving forward. It doesn't sound as reciprocal as intergenerational connection or intergenerational relationship. And so we advocate that it's always reciprocal because everybody benefits. It's a new way of connecting with a person that you wouldn't necessarily have sort of a natural, organic relationship with before, but breaking down those barriers. And on the work front, it is very important because they are your colleagues and you will be spending quite a bit of time together. So mentorship is a good thing, but mentorship should always be thought about as being reciprocal.
Beautiful. Did that answer your question, Tanya, or is there anything else that you would like to add? If you've been hearing some of these reverse mentorship, is there other wisdom that you might want to share with all of us?
I'll just come off a mute. No, that's actually really good. And I really appreciate the omnidirectional because I think that it is multi-directional rather than just one way. And I appreciate the reverse. It does look like, Deanna, as you said, taking a step back, and we don't want to actually do that, right? So I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. Great. And I see that, Shell, you have put in a question, not a question, a comment, which I think is, really important in terms of, that around your belief in teaching the soft skills, such as showing up with curiosity, non-judgment, and as noted, building trusting relationships. We all have a responsibility to help everyone we work with feel seen, heard, understood, and supported. If we can do that, we created understanding and reduce generalizations and judgment. And I see there's hearts that have been given as well, and I will give a heart too. And just, is there anything else that you'd like to add? You don't have to, don't feel necessary. I think that sums everything, but just want to give you a space if there's anything you'd like to add into that.
That does summarize it. And it just seems that in this day and age that we live in, people have forgotten how to ask questions and show up with curiosity and understand the other side. We rush to judgment, and that's not helping anyone. And I find generalizations in general can be very detrimental to creating perhaps even a false kind of sense of how things are when they don't need to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, and really, really important. Thank you. Yes. And I think that kind of springboards in some ways to Rick's question, although I do just want to give a shout out to Stacy. Thanks. I agree with you. Inside Out, Pixar's Inside Out is also a great movie right up there with The Intern. But to Rick's question, in which how would one create a culture that encourages the older generations to believe that they have something to learn from the younger generations? Part of that, I think, really is around curiosity as well, and listening. I can speak more, but I'm going to throw it to Deanne if you'd like to jump in first.
So I would say that you create a culture to encourage everyone and get people of older generations to speak to what they know speak to the experience they have, but again, it's identifying those gaps. And I'll give you an example. So in my work in community engagement, we figured out that there was gaps in certain positions that we wanted to fill, and one was language. And so we had older workforce members that could speak both English and French. And then we had younger workforce members that were very skilled in using technology like an iPhone. And so we would put them together so that they would work together in one position. And so they would meet and greet people in English and French. And so that would fill that gap because the older person had those skills to offer. And then the younger person could keep track of attendance and any messaging that was coming through an app or was being communicated with the group that was out doing the community work that we needed them to do. So it was creativity, it was trust, and believing in people of different generations having different skills and abilities and capabilities to get a job done. And by letting that relationship actually come together in somewhat of an organic way, but we did try to train everyone to be open to working with others of all backgrounds, all ages, all cultures, and by making it implicit and inviting and intentional that everybody would grow from that experience. Everybody seemed to be very open to it. So again, that culture of trust between generations is, and it needs to be cultivated. It's like any relationship, but I do believe in the time it takes to do that. The benefits are great for everyone, and everyone will achieve the goals that they've mutually set.
Beautiful. And I just want to just reiterate, in terms of, Diane's example, right? Just working from real life experiences. And so when we're looking at culture, it's not something to impose, but it's to start to look at, what's going on inside. So, even just asking, some of the older generations, what's going on for you? Like where would you like to have more learning? Where might be there's areas of growth for you? And the same questions can go to the younger generations. And just in that conversation, there will start to be sort of understandings where might be some of the areas of growth, but also you can also create an opportunity to ask what are some of the skills or passions or interests that you have. And so then people can start to see, oh, well, if that person has, again, I'll use the technology because you can see where my greatest learning curve is in many ways, is if I heard somebody saying, oh, I just love tech all the time, and, I could, help improve this, or I can improve that, then that would tweak me to think, oh, I'm actually going to go talk to that younger person because I know they're inspired by it and they're open to it. So there's, I think, again, that give and take of creating spaces to allow people to speak out what their strengths and gifts are, but also to speak out what their challenges and what might be some of their learning needs, and then having that sort of come together. And that, I think, springboards off Holly's comment around creating safe spaces where people can ask questions, make mistakes, and take every opportunity to learn from each other. And the thing that I would add into that is that absolutely we need to create safe spaces. And I think we also want to think about creating brave spaces and spaces of grace as well, because there's, again, different levels of safety and consciousness in terms of, as we look at creating trust, what might be safe for me might not be safe for you. What might take some courage on my part might not take courage on your part. And so how can we offer that place of grace to allow people to show up truly who they are, and to recognize relationships and culture, it's messy stuff. And if we can, again, be intentional and say, look, this may not come out the way I mean it to be, and yet here's some of the challenges I'm experiencing, or here's some of the things in terms of that piece. So I'm going to ask, I just want to sort of check back in terms of if that did answer your question, Rick, or if there's something you would like to add into that too, because I also truly believe as somebody who sees the challenge often has some really great wisdom and insight into how to maybe either bring the challenge more into awareness or even some solutions for it. So if you'd like to, Rick, love to hear from you. And if it's enough that you've written in there, then that's very thankfully appreciated as well.
Hey there, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. It's very, very helpful. Definitely something to work on within my company. What I end up finding is that some of the older generation, so I work in a construction company, so they're the site superintendents, and they just have this, various attitudes, like young people just don't want to work, they're always calling sick, and all these sorts of beliefs, which is like I can see how, like, through their perspective, what they're trying to say. And I haven't figured out a gentle way to say it yet, but like what I found is that it seems that younger people are more willing to work on themselves, and they don't tie their whole identity to how they show up to work. So I've had conversations with some younger people in our company where they're talking about the trauma that their mother brings, and how they're trying to break these bonds, and yet with some older generations, like, oh, we don't talk about that stuff. And so like they're not, they kind of suppress the feelings, the emotional side of things. And they just would rather just push it off, blame it on someone else. Not to, like, I think both provide value. I guess sometimes it's hard though to open up older people to just say, well, look, like, well, you're saying that they don't want to work. However, this is what's really happening. And how do I say that without triggering them to say that, well, really, they're doing more work than you do on yourself? And like, that's not a good way to say it. So I don't even know how to say that. But I'm just trying to figure out how to open up the belief that, well, they're not just lazy and so on and so forth, like how to create that empathy so that they are more open to wanting to learn from a younger person.
So wonderful, Rick. Like, thank you. And I think your answer is in what you've just given. I mean, what really hit me was when you said, you reframed and sort of said they just want to work on themselves. And this gets back to, Diane's, speaking in terms of that, the different generations, and again, if we look at millennials, they do compose the majority of today's workforce, and they really have got that more socio-political, ethical values. And what you said, Rick, was they seem to want to work on themselves. And what we know with, say, boomers who are older is that we've come from a mindset that it's work-centric. We're kind of workaholics. We're like independent. You get things done. You're career focused. You just, you keep charging forward. And so that's where it's like, well, they don't work. Like, but it's sort of like part of the conversation might be is back to say, wow, it's interesting to see the younger generation might have a bigger view than we did when we were working. So it's great to sort of be focused on the work, but we also now know from, research, I'm trying to think about being in a construction place that, saying it away, and I think you're going to have to help me in terms of it, because I know I'm saying it a bit academically, but, to sort of say, it's interesting that we know that if people take care of themselves, they actually work more, and they work long, like there won't be as many absenteeism, or there won't be there. So what I would suggest is you're really on the right track, Rick, in terms of reframing okay, what are these people doing right? And then how can you help people understand without necessarily making it personally about them, but saying, yeah, as a generation or that. Does that help at all? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else would like to add on that?
I'll just add one point, Kathy, and Rick, in one of the couple last sentences, you said, how do we build empathy? And again, giving opportunity to meet, maybe without talking a lot about work. And I know that that's difficult because everybody has deadlines and you have to get there. But there's a time element to this as well. And so if you have that luxury of time to be able to bring people together to build relationships and grow empathy and trust between them, when it does come down to the work styles and the crunch, that people remember where they got there first, which was a relationship, which was empathy and understanding, and knowing that their differences may not align all the time, but they are able to work through them to build something together. So just thought I'd throw that in.
Beautiful. And I don't know if you've seen The Intern, but again, I don't think they could have said anything to Robert De Niro, but somewhere along the way, he got it and ended up taking some time for himself. And I think there's a benefit there. So again, I think there's sometimes different ways that can help us learn that aren't always direct. So I think it's a full spectrum between how do we directly move on an issue, and then also how can we, indirectly support by modeling the way and creating spaces and talk and that. So thank you. So I also see that Louise, I'm sorry, I don't know how I think your name might be Louise, has also given a lovely salutations in the chat and saying that where you're connecting from, but also had a great question. And I see you've put Deanne first, so I'll read it, and then Deanne, I'll let you answer it, and then I'll add in too. And if anybody else feels impelled from our community to add in, please feel as well too. We welcome your comments as well. But so Louise's question is to Deanne and Kathy, if you have any comments or advice for organizations like Verks, where we not only face the challenge of addressing intergenerational gaps, but also multicultural, multilingual, and multi-ethnic staff. Policies, directives, and manuals in general tend to set clear expectations and behaviors for staff, but they also tend to mold and promote assimilation without an intersectional and multicultural lens. Do you think that this is inevitable? Would you offer practical recommendations for an organization like ours?
I can take a first stab at this. And so I'm just wondering if, Luis, there has been input into the organizational manuals and policies and procedures from your very multicultural, multilingual, and multi-ethnic staff. And I know that sometimes it adds confusion to get all that input, but if you can get the group together to be able to even hear each other out in a session or two, use some kind of facilitation to be able to empower everyone to share in building that policy and procedures and what you need for them to come together to reach your goals, your mutual goals. That would be a start, because not everybody will speak, but just to be in a room where you hope and think that you are heard and that your background and your values are important to the overall perspective. I think just that engagement will help.
Beautiful. And I mean, what pops for me is like, do you think this is inevitable? And I think this is us here saying, well, we don't want this to be inevitable. And I think that we are seeking not to be a melting pot, but maybe a patchwork quilt where people have their individual identities, but there's a wholeness there. And I think, you know, it is about looking at shared values and seeing how people can come together and move some of that. And it's ongoing work. It's ongoing work and commitment and saying, okay, great, we recognize that there's all these differences, and yet where's our commonalities too? And how can we move with both community unity and community difference at the same time? And I think that comes in our discussion. And I think then that can be filtered into policies and directives and manuals once people know at the heart of what's our common and how are we going to honor our differences. Did that answer your question, or is there anything, Louise, that you would like to add to that? Not hearing anything, and that's fine. I think I did see somebody's hand up. Did I see somebody's hand up? Perhaps Heather, would you like to jump in?
Hi there.
Hi.
I've been stuck on Rick's comments. I'm representing the fire service, and
Nice.
we have a very unique culture in that you know, we've got all ages, like definitely intergenerational for sure, but we're a very seniority driven militant type organization. And I would echo the comments of those that have spoken about the importance of even in our industry, like, you know, going out socially or in an atmosphere like that where it's become more difficult because we've just started 24-hour shifts, so we just don't see that as much. But what we have encouraged is morning meetings where everyone is involved. I mean, it used to be just the leaders or not, or they just sort of commanded their shift and crew as how they would. But the one thing that's been helpful for us is having a morning scrum with the team, and the team focus is really important in like making everybody feel like they're heard and included and a part of the group, and even the youngest participants. And so that's one thing. And then the second thing is pulling out those leaders and making sure that they have an opportunity to get some training on, I mean, they're in the same type of environment. They're the ones out with the crews, in the fire halls, in the community. They're the ones that are managing these groups of people, and they're the ones that are going to need that extra support in how to manage all these different emotional levels and all the different attitudes. And I think that that's really key, that we give them the tools to manage these diverse groups of people.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. That one, appreciate you also giving some real concrete, you know, tips. I think you've identified something that's really important, is that you can have small actions be leveraged to have big impacts. And I think, you know, by having these meetings where people all come together, it can be quite important in terms of those pieces. And then again, I mean, you're speaking, you know, something, you're singing a song that's close to my heart, which is, you know, we do need leaders to have education, because there is this false myth that people know leadership, and that people can learn without study, or that they just get it and don't need others, or don't need credit. And what we know is we do, in order to keep growing and having the ability to step up and meet our challenges of our days. It's really critical that we learn. And so I know I'm speaking to kindred spirits here, because you're all here on a learning webinar. I also recognize, so thank you, Heather. I really appreciate that. I think we've answered all the questions in the chat, And that would probably be a good segue to let people know a little bit about our executive leadership program for those people who want to stay on and continue on. We've got 4 minutes to sort of give that. But my question before we go, is there any other final questions that haven't been addressed, or else is there anything that my colleagues might want to share before we shift into giving a little bit of an overview of the XL program? So I'm not hearing any questions. I don't see any hands. Diane, is there anything that you would like to add in at this point?
No, I think that's great. I mean, I think we could continue this conversation for another hour. I hope that this sort of general overview is applicable to people's workplace situations, and then they can have good takeaways to muddle over.
Beautiful. And, you know, I think, yes, it's an ongoing conversation. We hope that we've planted some seeds. Really appreciate, Diane, you sharing your passion and making more intergenerational spaces through the work that you do. We know you're truly making a difference, and believe that everyone out there is truly making a difference too. So thank you all for being here. Yeah, you've once again re-inspired me just with your questions and how we move forward. So I think I'm going to see if I can, I'm going to move a little bit quickly through program and application information, just to let you know that we do have a suite of programs in our School of Leadership Studies to address a variety of leadership needs, from our multi-sectorial MA in leadership, as well as 2 specializations, one in health and the one I'm going to talk deeper about in executive leadership. We also have a Master of Global Leadership. So you can check out any and all of our programs on the website. Although, as I said today, I'm going to focus on the executive leadership. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box as we go. And if everything doesn't get answered, know that you can reach out to me or Ariana, and we're also happy to chat with you personally. So it's just exciting to talk to people about leadership. So yay. So let me just sort of move too fast. Why study executive leadership? I think that's a really good question. I really invite you to start with your own why. Why are you thinking about studying executive leadership, or perhaps generally leadership? And if you want, you can jot your reasons in the chat box, or just hold them with you. But for me, I know that there are a range of reasons why to study leadership, and especially for executive leaders, it's to fortify your leadership character and capabilities, to influence and mobilize with others for organizational change, and to be able to go the distance with clarity and with grit. Because for executive leaders in particular, those who are tasked with leading their organizations, it is clear that different capabilities are needed for organization-wide responsibilities that involve purpose, vision, mission, values, and strategic implementation. And so we know that these extraordinary times that we find ourselves in, we need executive leaders who can engage in values-based leadership to truly lead organizations in the face of adversity, uncertainty, ambiguity, and all that's going on. And again, often employees are promoted to mid-level or senior leadership positions because they're effective in their technical and their professional roles. And when they take on new leadership roles, they may be unprepared for what awaits them or how to navigate that human side of organizational life. So studying executive leadership with other leaders is critical to really becoming a trustworthy organizational leader with practical wisdom, and to enable thriving organizations. And so in our executive leadership program, it is really led by experienced organizational leaders, as well as it really focuses on the leadership knowledge to foster those sustainable organizational change, to strengthen leaders, as I said, character and capability, and to work on culture. So this executive leadership program really provides key capabilities and insights to professionals across multiple sectors: the public, the private, the civil sector. So if you're coming, you'll be in good company. And I'm just going to take just a couple more minutes in terms of our overview. It's a 2-year program. It's a combination of being online and in person. You get 9 electives of your own unit, and there's also a capstone project. And the first year runs concurrently with our graduate certificate in values-based leadership. So people who are in the values-based leadership are also aligned with those people who may be carrying on with that program. So that's there. I could talk more about why values, but at this point, just because of the time, I think I'm going to carry on, although I don't know why I moved the chat box a little bit and it seems to have stopped me from moving let me try it again, from moving my screen. Oh, no, now it's back. Perfect. All right, so admissions requirements. These are all on our site, and just want to recognize that at Royal Roads, there's a standard admission where you could, if you have an undergraduate degree, but there's also a flexible admission because we really do recognize professional practical experience. And so we're really looking at having a minimum of 5 years leadership experience, including at least 3 years as a designated organizational leader with responsibilities if you're in the standard admission track, or if you're going to go through flexible, we're looking for leaders with 10 years of experience, 7 in an organization, and 3 as a designated leader. And so, you know, you may be wondering what we mean by designated organizational leader. It's really a minimum of a director level. It's, you know, you could be the head of an organizational department that supports like the whole organization, including senior management, like organization development. You could have significant program or project management experience, as well as for the public sector, usually those in 10 years have experience across the ministry, diverse roles, reflecting on the organization's investment in their leadership development. So again, really sort of quick overview. I'm going to turn it over to Ariana, our education specialist, just to give you a little bit more specifics on how to apply and incoming updates. And you can definitely feel free to reach out more, but just recognizing that we're already a few minutes past the hour.
Thank you so much, Kathy and Diane. That was wonderful. I'm really enjoying hearing the discussion as I was here. So just a little bit on how to apply before we jump off the line today. So to apply at Royal Roads for the Executive Leadership Program or any program, there's an online application fee, and that's $134.01. And then we ask for some supporting documents, so things like official transcripts, a writing sample, personal statement, as well as a structured resume and 2 letters of reference. Those can be either academic or professional. And again, more details of this in the interest of time are all on our website. So there's all of the good stuff there, but just to give an overview, that's kind of what we expect. Some key dates that are coming up soon, very soon. The start for our MA in Leadership, Executive Leadership Specialization, starting in April, the application deadline March 14th. So there's still time. If you're thinking about it, now is the best time to apply, as well as the GC and Values-Based Leadership application deadline is the same for that as well. So if you're thinking about it, it's a great time. As well, we realize that going back to school in any regard is a big step. So of course, we have services that are available to you, things like financial aid and award services. So loans, bursaries, scholarships, other awards, as well as emergency funding, because sometimes life happens. And the link for that is on the screen at royalroads.ca, admission financial aid awards. That's on our website as well. And then if you're looking for more information or you want to have a one-on-one consultation on any of our programs, our email is learn.more@royalroads.ca, and then there's some phone numbers on the screen for local if you're in BC, and toll-free as well for North America. And they can really help you narrow down your application, your program options, and connect you with students and alumni like myself, just to go through those options for you. So with that, that's all for me. In the interest of time, it's 1:06, so we will let you go. But before we do, Kathy and Diane, do you have any final things to say today?
I just want to thanks. Oh, sorry, Kathy.
Nope, please go ahead.
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity and for this connection with a lot of people, and I did slide our website, Generaction's website, into the chat. So please feel free to reach out. I would love to connect and talk about this more in depth with anyone.
Beautiful. And I just wanted to give a heartfelt thank you for everybody who showed up and everybody who's watching this. You know, I would just say, you know, happy trails and lead on.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. And thank you to everyone tuning in. We'll see you next time. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.